All right, I think I'm going live now. Let me play a intro video commercial here for Endure. I thought I went live before, but apparently I didn't. So let's roll this again. I'm gonna show a little commercial for my buddy Corey Thomas's book, Sound Advice. It's well worth reading. I've read it enough to practically memorize it at this point, and I wouldn't waste your time on promoting something that I don't personally like myself. So here you go.
Author Evangelist Corey Thomas, a dedicated servant leader whose weapons are spiritual in nature and volatile in impact. Hot off the press, author Evangelist Corey Thomas's new book, Sound Advice, Music and the Battle for Your Mind, Body, and Soul. Matthew 5:13, ye are the salt of the earth, but if the salt has lost his flavor, wherewith shall it be salted? It's author Evangelist Corey Thomas's new book, Sound Advice, Music and the Battle for Your Mind, Body, and Soul. Purchase your copy to help maintain that flavor in your spiritual walk. This book is epic. It's sold on every major online bookstore or go to CoreyThomasMinistries.com. I got my copy. Be sure to get yours. It's author Evangelist Corey Thomas's new book, Sound Advice, Music and the Battle for Your Mind, Body, and Soul. Get your copy today.
Hey guys, everybody, hello. I hope everybody's having a good week and weekend and getting closer to the holidays. Merry Christmas. And it's a time to really celebrate our families and our loved ones. And I know as hard as it is to do, especially for somebody like me, because I'm always inquisitive about something. As you know, turn off the news once in a while and maybe spend some time um, doing that. But tonight I wanted to discover. I've already discovered it. I wanted to talk about recovery in general, recovery centers, how you go about it, what's your outcome, what's your desired outcome when you go into a recovery. Specifically, I know that I've dealt with a lot of people recently who we've sat there and talked about. What's the difference between a faith-based recovery and a regular recovery center? And I can only give you my experience, um, which is pretty much standard across the board from a lot of what I understand from other people. And I don't want to use hearsay, so we'll just go through mine. Um, but when you look at it, I know the title I put there was false witness. And, I wanted to cover that because you have to understand when you go into recovery, whether it be faith based or any kind of recovery or just in life in general, okay? False witness, and I'm going to go John 4:23 here. It says, but the hour is coming and now here when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth, for the Father is seeking such people to worship him. And Matthew 24:24, for false Christs and false prophets will arise and perform great signs and wonders, is they, so is they, to lead astray, if possible, even the elected. Um, when you go into recovery, if you went in like I did, I was sober when I went into recovery the last time, and I went in seeking to figure out the emptiness that was inside of me, and it ends up a lot of things. And I remember telling them when I first came in there that I was like, I strongly think, and I was thinking about Jim Morrison and when he said heartache and the loss of God. So that's kind of the mind frame I was in at the time. And it wasn't just getting sober and staying sober, it was about getting sober minded as well. And that's important. And I will tell you all, if you went the route I did, don't expect that. Um, and I mean that greatly. Don't expect to go in there and have this religious change happen. That's not where it happens. And I can promise you that when people ask me, okay, when we discuss what's the difference between a profit and a nonprofit, I'll tell you this is nothing. There is no such thing as a true nonprofit in the area where I'm at. Um, there's always somebody there pinching and scrounging, and just, it goes back to that suicidal tendency song from the 80s, Send Me Your Money. Don't expect that. Don't, their narrative may be praise Jesus, but what they're really saying is send me your money, hand me your money. It's very expensive to be into rehab, very expensive. And not going about the cost, but especially people with Medicaid, Medicare, something like that, you're 100% covered. So they want you there. And a lot of times they will also get you in there, get you to leave. You can come right back, and it becomes a revolving door process. I know for me, for example, I was kicked out for being too truthful about some real issues that I saw, and it ends up I was right. I wasn't being a derelict. Then I wasn't breaking a bunch of rules. I wasn't doing anything wrong. The reason I got booted was for which they say I wasn't booted. They say I graduated. Well, whatever kind of graduation that is, no thanks. I'll give you the certificate back. Um, but for using the phone too many times on Thanksgiving, I decided to stay in there for the Thanksgiving holiday. This is a few years back, and because I was worried about going out and just being stupid, and being that same derelict that couldn't control myself outside of a controlled environment. And so I stayed in there, and I remember at first they told me I had 30 minutes of FaceTime. Okay, I don't use Apple products. That's not a plug for Samsung, but it is in the same way. But to get that going is, so they explained to me I could use the computer or tablet, and talk to my sister, my family, my friends live, and I had 30 minutes while I was in there. Everybody else that left got their cell phones and stuff like that they could use for a couple of days. So what I did, is being me, is I took that 30 minutes and divided it and got into 5-minute increments. And I called 6 people. And I already know the math, but I was trying to remember who I actually called. And so that's what I did. And when it comes back, it started up on this nonsense about that I was manipulating the system. And trust me, it's only me and 2 other guys in there. And we had sat there, and what I started doing that weekend was Bible study with these 2 fellows. And, but long story short, they gave me told me I had to do a 10,000 word, I got words, like a prison punishment, words. So I had to write a 10,000 word essay. And I kid you not, I finished it in 2 days, and I took it and I tore it apart with Bible verse by Bible verse by Bible verse, real life situations. And I think it was more than some people at the time could handle, that I wasn't some just dummy in there. And I think that's kind of the way people review. But you have to understand, at this point, too, when I was there, it was people that were doing peer support had maybe been sober 3 months to 6 months, some of them maybe a year. And a lot of them were acting as counselors, more or less. It was a bad setup, a bad system. But the thing is the money's flowing, and the people who are higher up, who are the ones who are going to tell you what to do, secular, everything's secular. I specifically remember there's one guy watching a Bon Jovi video, and I've told this story 1,000,002 times. But him getting in trouble for that being secular, and I was like, okay, this is crooked ass brainwashing. And it was just silliness. It was petty silliness to me. And when you're there, and especially a lot of these people who are coming off heroin and or opiates in general, alcohol. I didn't see any marijuana people. I think we all know why. But you need to be wearing kid gloves. The people that are higher up need to be wearing kid gloves. I mean, that's really kind of important because you're looking at when you detox, you're highly emotional. I mean, you're depressed, your anxiety's off the charts, and you can do like I did, and I do a lot of writing, period, and I think I filled up something like 5 or 6 notebooks when I was there. Um, but that's not the point. Not everything there is bad. They had some great counselors, some great peer support people. But to go in there thinking that it's not a for-profit organization and they generally aren't trying to treat you like a product is a different thing. I know when I looked at my bill back, they had on my charges Klonopin treatment, and I didn't have any issues with Klonopin. I never have. I still have a prescription for Klonopin that I probably haven't filled in 2 or 3 months now. I don't know. I just don't use it. It's not. I don't like it. But anyway, um, what I'm saying is you need to really, really, when you go into anything, when you go into any kind of sobriety, you need to develop what I say is sober mindedness, which is biblical. And that's so important. I mean, you have to change your thinking. Do I believe that I was saved and have salvation? Yes, but that was over 6 months after I had been removed or asked to agree to disagree to part ways. Um, and I went right back out and I was like, screw the world. This is what I'm going to do. And I got drunk enough to die from it. And literally months of drinking a 1.75 of Tito's vodka a day. And that's pretty insane to think back on. It always is. I've told the story enough. You can go back and look at one of my testimonials if you want to hear it. But let's get into mindfulness real quick. Mindfulness, this is by definition, okay? Hang on, sorry. Mindfulness is the basic human ability to be fully present, aware of where we are and what we're doing, and not overly reactive or overwhelmed by what's going on around us. The goal of mindfulness is to wake up the inner workings of our mental, emotional, and physical processes. Mindfulness is available to us in every moment, whether through meditations and what? Whether through meditations or prayer. Or mindful moment practices like taking time to pause and breathe when the phone rings instead of rushing to answer it. That's the hard part. And, because my main thing is working on my master's in psychology is I now, just inherently notice different behaviors. I know with even myself and others as well, if you sit there and you get in I'm terrible about hopping in a rabbit hole, but if you, sit there and you start on that TikTok or something, you just start scanning through it, man, it can be endless. You can look up and it's 4 in the morning. So, some things that I practice myself are putting the phone to the side, putting it on its charger, and kind of walking away, which is really helpful for somebody like me. I've started again playing the guitars because I decided that I really liked acoustic guitar better because I've gotten more laid back as I've gotten older. But things like that, meditation, prayer. I take baths a lot and candles and the whole thing. All that stuff helps. And I don't have the struggles that a lot of people do with the cravings and the triggers, which is another one of my issues with the recovery centers is triggers are not fake. Some triggers, hey Ginger, and but some are just taught. Like you're supposed to, if you're me, you're supposed to not be able to go into a liquor store, go out to a restaurant to eat, like a Chili's or whatever. And I'm talking about sobriety, Ginger, and rehabs and things like that. And just what I did on my journey and what I do now. So sorry, I told you I get rabbit hole. What was I talking about? I don't even remember. Oh, triggers. Yes. Okay. So, I live in Richmond, Kentucky now. I drive to Lexington, Kentucky a lot. And I see, there's a big liquor barn sign. It's the largest liquor store in the United States. And, that's supposed to bother someone like me. And it doesn't in the least bit. Um, because I faced all that stuff. I don't have a problem going into Kroger and walking down the beer aisle. I've gone, as I said last week, I've gone to get liquor for people who can't be driving or shouldn't be driving or, or being responsible not to drive. And it doesn't bother me. There's liquor in the house. As you can see on the camera, there's a big bottle of something up there. And that's just to give away to somebody else. I just don't have a problem with it. I don't drink because I am phenomenally bad at drinking. I mean, that's the truth about it. Is I just can't. But I had to face all that. So after I got out of the hospital, I was in there for a long time, and so on and so on. And finally, around December, around this time last year, I started doing therapy, but really psychotherapy, and got to the bottom of it. Like I say, the therapy I was doing and being led on was going in reverse, like remembering things and, okay, gosh, I did this. And you keep going backwards and you go back like 2 year increments. And, finally got back to the past where I was dealt with all these things that were a reality in my life. Bad child abuse, verbal and physical, and just stuff I'd never ever even admitted. So I get through that process, and this took a long time. And then all of a sudden, it was I don't have any desire or think about drinking anymore. If it comes up, if somebody, it's always going to be somebody's going to be like, you say you don't drink, and they're going to be like, why not? Um, and I can explain it a certain way, which more people can use this and just say, "Man, I just suck at drinking," and that's part of the thing with admitting it that can get you past certain little obstacles, and you don't have to deal with triggers. And with cravings, I haven't had any sort of cravings in a long time. A lot of people like to say that's because you can't drink because you died of alcoholism. And I was like, first of all, I don't use alcoholism. It's alcohol use disorder. Alcoholism's a stigma. And I say this every week. I mean it every week. It's like putting a big A on your chest, a scarlet letter. And so it's not the fact that I can't drink, it's the fact that I don't drink. So you can differentiate that part of it right there and go, okay, I don't drink, I'm not a drinker. And honestly, I don't pink cloud the stuff, as they like to say in AA type 12 steps. I'm just happier. I get a lot more done. I mean, geez, I'm finishing my master's in psychology right now, and that's something that 10 years ago, no way, no, he's just a drunk, he's a dummy. But no, I really push with that, and I learn as much as I can. I mean, I probably put 8 to 10 hours a day into school, and that's worth it to me. And when I need to chill out seriously, I'll pick up the guitar, I'll pick up an Xbox controller, I'll go take a bath, I'll go run nowhere for no good reason. But that's just the way it works. So, and then getting to that, the false prophecy thing, I think became really important to me because people started saying when I got better and started doing everything, I didn't do the AA. I admit my life is unmanageable. It was all drinking to me, Ginger. And when I was laying there, like I knew I was dying. They told me, time and time again, you got maybe, went from 3 weeks to a month to 3 months, and came home to hospice, not to rehash all that again. But it was one day, in praying, that a simple prayer turned into 2.5 hour prayer. And here I am. So, yes, I do believe in salvation. I have no medical problems whatsoever from this. And I mean, I was jaundiced, end stage liver failure, kidney failure, at least 3 months in the hospital. And, and there's so much more to it. I mean, I had just lost my way. I was so miserable. It was a slow suicide. And so when I get back and, I start and I pray, and I didn't pray for myself. I just prayed for forgiveness. And it didn't like beg for my life and all the stages of death and dying that you hear that people go through. I wasn't bargaining, nothing like that. And it was just, an amazing transformation, because within weeks I had liver scans and my liver's back to healing, and my kidneys, I have no issues. And now physically, when I got home from the hospital, I weighed 120. When I went in the hospital, I weighed 115. I weigh 180 now. And it was a long journey and a fight. I couldn't walk. And I had to learn to walk again. I had to learn to do everything again. And, I came out, and then I was kind of scaring some of my old friends off. Everybody's thinking, well, okay, he's just Bible eating religious nut. That's not true. I have a good relationship with God, but I don't believe in slamming Jesus in everybody's face, because in my experience and what I dealt with and what I went through with faith-based rehab and coming out of there, is everybody that's saying praise Jesus and screaming it to the clouds. Like, I know people that I couldn't have a conversation with without them saying, oh, praise Jesus. Be like, what's going on with you, Goodlow? And I'd say, well, nothing. How long's it been since you drank? I don't know, man. Because honestly, I don't keep days either. I think that's a bad idea. Ginger, that's a good idea. And for me, in all of it, is I could sit there and say a couple of days. I could sit there and say it's been a couple of weeks, and somebody would inherently, I kid you not, say to me, praise Jesus, just like that. And it goes on like that. And I was going to these churches where, people are touching people on the heads and saying you're healed. And I saw people doing it on purpose, like the falling down and, going through all that. And it was such nonsense. Because I saw him looking around to see who was looking at him. And I was like, man, I even knew one of the kids. And I was like, why'd you do that? He's like, I don't know. Everybody else was doing it. And I was like, see, you don't fake it till you make it. If you really want to get better, you have to do it no matter what anybody says. Do it for yourself. My assistance in getting sober was not a recovery center. It was not a rehab. It was not a 12-step program. It was a good relationship with God, where I come from, and myself, and just doing what you say you're going to do. And, I go into this a lot, but the 12-step programs are a failure. They're based on what's called the Jelinek curve. And this guy Jelinek was a career criminal, and so much more. And he didn't even believe in his own curve. And to this day, in the scientific method, he didn't believe in his own curve. But to this day, AA still uses that. And, it's, gosh, man, I've studied so much, because when I went to an AA meeting, and I don't know how others out there feel, but when it would get into that contest where I could say I drank a 1.75 of Tito's a day, which is true, somebody would inherently say, no, I drank 2 of those plus a keg and smoked enough crack to kill a horse. And, okay, I don't care. It was so wrong. Yeah, I know that, Ginger. And, but a lot of them are faking them. I was going to tell you what the Jelinek curve is based on. Okay. It's made up of 5 stages, which is 1, pre-alcoholism, 2, predominant or early alcoholism, 3, crucial or middle alcoholism, 4, chronic or late alcoholism, 5 is recovery. Now, with the Jelinek curve, and if you'll notice, when you go to, or, when you get out of an AA, you're supposed to say, keep coming back. And they will always say they're in recovery. Nobody ever says recovering or recovered, because part of that in this is that you can't recover. So it's a cancer you can't cure. And I strongly disagree with that. Do I think I could go back out and start drinking normally? No, probably not, because it puts me into a part in my head where depression kicks in. And that's where I got to. And this is an actual study, case study that I did. And I got 105% out of 100 on it. Um, the way, and I'll read exactly what I wrote. The way I view addiction is generally a symptom of more deeply rooted issues. I prefer to use alcohol disorder as opposed to alcoholic for this one, as I find the latter to be very stigmatized. It's hard to separate for many the differences between drug of choice, physical addictions, mental addictions, self medicating factors, and mental health disorders. So, what I'm saying there in a nutshell is that a lot of people like me have an underlying actual disorder or disease, which mine was a severe and chronic depression, anxiety. I finally developed social anxiety. Who, if you know me, you know that's not me. And so you're going through all that, and it's when you drink, it makes it worse. So you get to a point. Yeah, ginger 1.75 is that's the biggest bottle you can get. Um, so that's like, you got pint, or yeah, half pint, pint, fifth, keep going up. So it's like 2.5 fifths, basically, right around there. And so when you're not dealing with your depression, example for an underlying factor, the last 4 months I drank night, morning, afternoon, evening. And the second I would start sobering up, I mean, I would be shaking like a leaf, And like I've said many times on here, I spent 4 months in like hotels, something like $40,000 just to hide. And I think that was more of the depression than it was anything else. And uh, I knew I was getting sick. I knew I was badly sick. And by the time I got to the hospital, by the time the nurse Beth got me to the hospital, I was already jaundiced so bad. My skin was like uh, color of that L8 can, except a little bit lighter. Add some yellow in there, and uh, you know, and I realized it after all this, and after I started back in school, that man. Nobody ever treated my underlying issues. So the symptomatic part of it would be the alcohol. So I was self-medicating and my symptoms were treated. It's easy to treat addiction. And I say that I'm somebody who's died from detox. I went through a coma in 2008 for 3 months from a detox from alcohol. And so you keep going there and you go, nobody's ever really dealt with my underlying cause. So I take the symptomatic alcohol and the disease of depression, chronic depression, PTSD, and you go, okay, if you treat just the symptom and you don't treat the depression, it's never going to work. It's going to implode. Sometimes, some way, you're going to have a bad day and you're going to say, well, for me, I'd use any excuse to drink. I went over this last week. Uh, I dropped my L8 in the sink and I didn't mean to. Oh, I better drink. I'm just saying that's how stupid it was. And if you follow on my Facebook, you'll see I generally every day like to mention how that I blame my sister for all of my trauma in my life, which is completely untrue. But that's another thing I learned in detox and group therapy and 12-step therapy is you have a lot of poor me and pity me, which I was guilty of at one point, and that's not the truth. The poor me is the way to keep you addicted, and some people are addicted to being addicted, i.e. the social addiction of going to those meetings and getting justified for your own bad behavior. And this has been studied, and that's where you get to a real study in psychiatry, and a lot of doctors in psychiatry. There's only 11% in the U.S. that'll call the alcoholism a disease. And you go to what everybody's using, what every recovery center is using. I don't care if it's faith based or it's regular based. 95% of those use the 12-step program. So you've got a 3% chance that 12-step program is going to be effective. It's going to be a cure-all. So you got a 3% success rate, and you've got 95% of the rehabs in America that are using that model. So you're looking at less than a 1% chance in it all of being successful. And that sucks. I mean, but it's a proven formula that works for the point. If you're going to maintain, and that's all you want to do for the rest of your life, you can easily maintain by making sure you go to a meeting every day or 2 meetings a day or so on and so on. When I was going to the meetings, I got to the point where I would okay, man, I got to get out of here and have a drink, because you hear all those stories and you get that group polarization and the group think going on, and it's a disaster, man. It's just a disaster. And so once we got past Jelinek, on the Jelinek curve, okay. Bill W., he's the co-founder of AA, himself came to reject many of the processes of the AA model. And he himself used LSD to get sober and got honest about the differences between maintaining and healing. The community he assisted in creating came to reject him, which is all true. So, okay, Ginger, cool. Write me, yeah. And so Bill W., once he comes to the realization that the AA model is not the only thing that needs to be addressed in this whole situation. He really got rejected by AA towards the end of his life. But at the beginning of his life, even before he helped co-found AA, he was actually using LSD to get sober, which now there's plenty of studies that are proven how fruitful LSD, MDMA, shrooms, psilocybin, it all can be I'm talking like they're microdosing people in one session with doctors. So this has to be medically done. And they give that dose. And I know right now, one study going on, it's going on 9 months right now, and nobody's had the desire to go back out and drink. This also is proven fruitful for cigarettes and PTSD. So we'll see. That study I don't know enough about, but I know it's legitimate in what I do know. So to get to the end of that was just my thing on recovery. And don't expect recovery to save you. And I know some of them, they put like in their advertisements, good night, Ginger. They put they're saving lives one at a time. And that's that's not the way it goes. I've asked people from the same recovery centers to put up a memorial to those who have passed away walking out of there, and there's been a ton of them. So, claiming you're saving lives one at a time is a big, huge, huge, huge pat on your back when you're not given realistic numbers. Because if we learn to face that this is its own pandemic, look at how many people are dying of opiates and fentanyl poisoning right now. Like I always go back to the stories. I got a chance to meet a lady this year, I'm sorry, whose son smoked a joint and died from smoking that joint because it was laced with fentanyl. That's an issue. And opiate withdrawal is being treated with Suboxone or for a lot of ladies who are pregnant or might be pregnant, Subutex, which is something I'm just getting into study. I know enough about it, but I could always know more. Is the way that I look at it. So that's mine, and a little bit of rambling last night. But to get back to my part about it that's important is we have to understand what false witness is and a false prophecy. And that is, a lot of people say, oh, well, he said that GD word. Well, that's taking the Lord's name in vain. I had a priest explain that to me one time, and I can't do it on this network endures clean entertainment. And but the way he explained it to me is you have to think about what you're saying. So you look at somebody who's saying praise Jesus and Jesus saves, give me your dollar and he'll save you, prosperity theology. It's not going to work. And I stay strong to that. So that's why I started really legitimizing myself in what I do. And that's to be able to fight back, because if not, they're going to all call you an idiot, or you are being run by the devil, or something just ignorant, and it's ignorance. And purposeful ignorance is a totally slick way of cashing in. And I know it to be true. I don't have to be concerned with it, honestly. Is let them do their own. I do know one thing, and that's like the Johnny Cash song. You can run on for a long time, but sooner or later God will cut you down. That's true in my case. I know it, I love it, and I wouldn't change a thing about what happened with me, because it got me to where I am now, where I'm fulfilling the ideal of assisting others in the process of possibly healing themselves. And I don't mean by themselves. Without therapy, without that's the part I left out about recovery centers. If you don't have, I strongly believe that any kind of substance use disorder or alcohol use disorder, I strongly believe it's a case by case basis. That means I think everybody needs one on one therapy, a clinician, and not just the group things and the 12 steps. Can the 12 steps help and maintain? Yes, I've already said that a million times. They're not all bad, but people who are using that is the only method are wrong. And it takes no effort to use AA. They don't have to pay fees to Alcoholics Anonymous to use the program. So you got to think about that right there. That's free. It's free psychology. And so from a business point of view, I don't blame any of these people. If their goal is to make money, their goal is to make money. Good for them. However, if your goal is to find God and your goal is to reunite with God, is the best way I can say it. That's what happened to me. And be absolved of your sins and freed. Ask God to free you from the sins you've committed, because you committed them of your own free will, just as I did. And I can go into this all day. I mean, there's so many that warn you. People always want to pull up their when they're what you call Bible beaters, and you got to think some of our leaders, were. Basically, a lot of people looked at them and the leaders of the Christians, and that's sad. It's tragic, but it doesn't have to be that way. So you go in, I'll give you a couple more here. Matthew 7:15, beware of false prophets who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravenous wolves. Matthew 17 is what that was. 1 John 4:1, beloved, do not believe every spirit, but test the spirits to see whether they are from God, for many false prophets have gone out into the world. Finally, let's go into 2 Peter 2:1. But false prophets also arose among the people, just as there will be false teachers among you who will secretively bring you in destructive heresies, even denying the master who brought them, bringing upon themselves swift destruction. So when you have the false prophets and you have those in recovery, basically what happened with me now, this is not everywhere. But, you're going to hell, or that's the devil pulling on your shoulders, or, something else absurd. When you find out later, like I did, leaving one of these places, and you find out these people are going out and drinking, they're not abstaining. And, but, and committing crimes and doing things like that, but they're the first to tell you to praise Jesus. And it just got really old to me. So I was like, well, what can I do about this? It's simple. I prayed on it, and God said, get yourself back to school. And, since then, I'm 5 semesters in now, and I've had straight A's, period. I've got a 3.86 GPA right now, because some of my stuff that transferred from the University of Kentucky back in the day, I didn't have as good a grades back then, but I take full responsibility there. All right, so That'll take me into 2 Corinthians 11, 13 through 15. For such men are false apostles, deceitful women distinguishing themselves as apostles of Christ, and no wonder. For even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light, so it's no surprise that his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. Their end will correspond to their deeds. Matthew 24:11. And many false prophets will arise and lead many astray. That goes into Matthew 15:14, which I use in my life daily. And that is, ignore them, for they are blind, and the blind will lead the blind into a ditch or a pit. Depends on which version you read. So you need to think about all that stuff. And hey, Erica, good to see you. And it's you need to take all that with you when you go into any type of recovery, or you sit there and Now I had a group of my own that I was trying to make into a group of spiritual yet realistic, and things, and that didn't work. And my friend Erica Burke and my nurse buddy and a few more of us have branched off and started a or a GN3 and Associates of Sober Minds, which is actually an LLC now. And we're going to build and I don't mean build like hand build, I mean build up from the ground up, a recovery based on truth, getting honest with yourself, and getting the therapy you need. Because if I had gotten the therapy I needed, these are the what ifs that I don't really like doing, but what if this one? What if I got treated for PTSD 10, 15 years ago when my dad died? Things could have been different. But again, I wouldn't change a thing because it wouldn't get me to where I am today. And that's what's important, is where I'm at today. But I wouldn't be where I am today if it was for a recovery center. That recovery center made me more jaded than anything else. What got me sober is God and truth and going through treatment, actual mental treatment. And I don't know why this is. I know, actually, I do know why more recovery centers don't use real clinicians on a full-time basis. Like, you should be, while you're in recovery, you should meet with a clinician probably once a day and do your groups past that. Because in the group, I mean, you got to think, if you're sitting there and you're like, what I do on Facebook almost daily is my sister Elena, one time we opened Christmas presents. We were sneaking and doing it where my parents wouldn't know. My parents found out. Elena blamed me. And that's why I started drinking. And I can tell you this, if I go into an AA meeting and say some nonsense like that, somebody's going to pat me on the back and say, oh, man, it's not your fault. And be like, oh, yeah, I'm completely lying, but you do get patted on the back for the wrong reasons. And that's an issue with the group polarization. And you can read in any textbook, psychology. You had individual therapy every day, Erica? Individual, what was I getting at? Oh, in the recovery meetings, two is they're supposed to be self-governing. And to understand what that means is, that means you're all supposed to lead it. You're all supposed to follow by the rules. And I'm telling you right now, in my life, that's happened maybe once out of 30 meetings. And I don't know how many I've been to. I don't care. I don't count days, how long I've been sober. I know I'm going on 2 years. I'm on the downhill side of that. And which is she went through my wait, who? You have people in there who are so-called leaders, whose only education is what they've learned in the meetings from others in the meetings and their own story. And they're gonna people who take advantage. Like, I always tell the story about, good, you had a good therapist. There's people who take advantage. Like, my story is, when I was in North Carolina, I had a guy who was supposed to be a sponsor for me, who was actually, man, he'd call me and he'd be so messed up. And he'd always say he wouldn't. He'd say it's because he's old, but then he'd have me go get groceries for him and stuff like that. So you have to deal with that. And the other toxic situations you can really get into in those rooms. And this is absolutely the truth. Even when I was in recovery, man, I had the same issue. You got people with ankle bracelets, and you got people who have to go to the meetings, who have to stay sober for court. And that is absolutely truth. And one little germ right there can contaminate that whole process. It's a bad model that they use, and it's not just the recovery center I was in. It's almost, well, no, Charter Ridge in Lexington's not bad about that, and that's an actual hospital recovery center where you can be medically treated, um, and so on and so on. But once you get that group thinking, that group mentality going, and that it becomes this polarization, man, that can send everybody down the same path. And you do need a new sponsor? I'll help you, okay? And uh, just don't put your eggs all in that basket. Um, it's proven. You can get 75% of the people who've gone through individual therapy and not used AA, NA, 12-step models, group therapy, and things like that. And 75% of the people are successful for lifetime success. But there's always an issue to that, too, is the expense in regular therapy. With AA, it's no cost involved. And if you can find a meeting that's a good meeting with people you can trust, and people you can share a common goal with, not a like mind, because that's your danger zone right there, is the like mind. But if you can get with people who, you're all going towards this one thing, is I don't want to be drunk. I want to be a better parent. To me, I want to be a better guitar player now, because somehow I'm 47 years old and decided that, hey, I'm going to learn guitar again. That's me. I'm a mix of everything sometimes. But so that's going to be it for me tonight. There's a lot of rambling, but a lot of truth in there. And when I get down to it, really the reason I'm in psychology, the reason I'm getting my master's, the reason I'm going to be a therapist and a clinician, and whatever else, I'll probably end up getting my doctorate just because I'm like that. I have to go full into everything. So I always pick up this book, since this is a Celebrate Recovery book, which there is a 12-step meeting that's some of these can be very fruitful, honestly. Celebrate Recovery is an AA-based program, but it's faith-based AA. And generally, if you've got a good group of people in there, people who are sincere and not people who are in there selling you snake oil, it can be a really good thing. But I've had this book for 3 years now, and it's just daily devotions. It's 365 daily devotions. It's the 30th anniversary of this one, but it's Celebrate Recovery, and I'll put that up somewhere so that if you want to look into it. But I always like to finish with this, and no matter where I turn to in this book, I don't plan this out. I just open the book, and whatever it is, somehow I say God's probably involved. That somehow it always turns into something that's going on in that day for me. And like I said, I just don't go page by page and start at the front and back. I mean, I just literally flop it open when I'm sitting here talking to you. And all right, so this one is day 215 in the book. It's called Positive Habits, and this is Matthew 12, 43 through 45. When an evil spirit comes out of a man, it goes through arid places seeking rest and does not find it. Then it says, I will return to the house I left. When it arrives, it finds the house unoccupied, swept clean, and put in order. Then it goes and takes with it 7 other spirits more wicked than itself, and they go in and they live there. All right, so the devotional here, and these are written by random people, and I think almost all of them are anonymous, but they're good. When we begin recovery by focusing our attention on ridding ourselves of negative habits, we then learn that lasting change comes only through God's power. As the days pass, we become more and more free from our old hurts, hang-ups, and habits. We make fewer poor, unhealthy choices, and we grow closer to the one and only higher power, Jesus Christ. Reaching that point in our recovery is a great accomplishment as well as a dangerous place to be. It's a mistake to say we have arrived unless we keep moving forward. We risk relapse at that point, which can actually leave us worse off than when we began. We must always be hard at work making positive choices, and adding new healthy habits into our daily lives. And even more important, we must work to keep our relationship with God fresh and vibrant. We can do this by reserving a daily time with God for self examination, Bible reading, and prayer. The more we know God and His will for our lives, the more we fortify ourselves against relapse, strengthen our relationships with God, and become empowered to reach out to others through our words and example. The prayer is, Holy Father, thank you for rescuing me from my mess and empowering me to hold on to my freedom. In Jesus' name, amen. And that is dead on where I was all around tonight. And I just appreciate that part of everything now. Being able to, don't know how else to put it, but what would Jesus do? And that's the way I look at a lot of life. Um, Next week, I was wanting to go into this is what I'm doing a case study on now, but the differences between addicted and non-addictive family systems, because I needed to get a real stress point across that it's very important that if you really truly want to recover, that you don't go based on thinking that you have that alcoholic gene, because there's never been one identified. It's something that somebody ran with at an AA meeting or some other group meeting, and it's not true. They have identified genes that are genetic that deal with depression and anxiety and things like that, and they can mutate. One drink can be enough to set you off into an alcohol use disorder if you do have the heredity that goes with the infinite sadness. And that's the way I would put it. But so just to read this real quick. Addicted, this is the difference between addicted and non-addicted family systems. Addicted family systems, sorry, miss out on some key ingredients of healthy families. These include a desire to spend time together, effective communication patterns, and the ability to deal positively with crisis, encouragement of individuals and their goals, clear roles and boundaries, optimism about the future, and a growth producing structure. So the family dynamic's really, really interesting, and I'll look forward to covering that next week. And for now, that is the end of it, and I will see you all next week. Thank you and much love.